Hey guys, what is going on? It has been a while since I've made a video. It has literally been a few months. Reason being is obviously I've been in the transition of moving from London in the UK to Greece, which is in mainland Europe. It was a very long drive, so I did it in two parts. I actually flew out to Greece and secured the accommodation and where I was staying in the apartment, which is all new for me. I've always lived in different situations, but living in Greece is definitely very, very different to living in the UK. So getting used to that is something completely different, which I'll talk about in a separate video. And yeah, so I'll talk about all of that in a separate video, but obviously keeping it traditional, technical analysis and what's actually happening in the markets. We'll jump into what I'm looking at. So it's currently Friday, and as we can see in the markets, there is some very, very good movement across the board. So starting with the DXY, what we can currently see with the DXY is that price is basically making its way back up to this high. We can see that price is, very impulsively moved up sharply, had a little pullback. Well, I wouldn't say pullback, a very strong pullback, didn't quite commit, filled majority of the wick, and then kind of aggressively pushed back up. Now that we're trading at the top of this area, I wouldn't really focus much on this pattern, but I would more so look at this level of value here, as there isn't really any areas where price looks like it can really make a significant pullback at this point, and we don't have any sort of signal from the market. I wouldn't be looking for a short position as yet. I would potentially be looking at, if price is aggressively moving up to here, how are we going to approach this level? Could we approach it with structure, which is, it could take a little bit more time to develop. However, that could be a much better play in the long run for us to go short, as we would see plenty of good opportunity to take this all the way back down here to fill this sort of mini gap. But then once again, it's not essential and we don't have to, but look at this non-progressive movement. So we pushed up and then we've had this long correction. This whole move to the downside has been corrective, so overall this can go up, and if it does shoot upwards, we just take a message from the market and we look for that impulse and correction and we go up with the long run. But for now, we have to take it as it comes. There's so many different things that could actually appear on this. I wouldn't just FOMO into a trade. I would just be very patient with this and wait in anticipation, hence the reason I haven't taken any trades on Euro USD. But let's jump straight into the watch list. So jumping into the watch list, we can see that with Euro USD, we have very, very nice movement. Essentially kind of in line with the DXY going short. We can see here that we are moving to this potential price target, and as we are coming into this zone here, we are moving slowly. Right now there's a very good opportunity for a potential buy, but looking at the DXY, there is that opportunity where the DXY could go a little bit bullish before it goes short. So if this does go up and then comes down, we could essentially see this break below and then come up. So hence the reason I don't really want to just get involved in a trade now. However, there is a potentially good area to be getting involved. It's just not the sort of price action I'm looking for. I'm looking for a strong impulse followed by a correction and then continuation. So that's basically it for Euro USD. GBP USD, it was looking pretty good. I'm happy that I was waiting for the 1, 2, 3 and not a second touch, because if we got something like that, then I'd be inclined to look for the short position. At the moment, with this looking like it's just continuously pushing up, it is what it is. There was a potential trade in here, but I kind of got taken out. I was looking at this sort of area here at this point, and if we just pull it back here, at this point here, it was looking pretty nice. And then as the next candle came, it spiked up, and I was like, okay, if I get tagged in here, I'll take the short. So I literally had, I believe it's on my object tree. Nope. Okay, I took it off. I'll put it in there now. We had it in around about here, and I was just, for some reason, I was just a bit too aggressive with this. And I put in my stop around about here, I believe it was. And I said, okay, cool. And then the next candle came in and then just took me out. So it was just basically one of them ones. I think really and truly stop loss should have been up here, and then I would have experienced the trade and literally been in it. So, you know, lesson learned, you know, not to be too aggressive. That was the first trade I took this year alone. So I was kind of just, it is what it is. But yeah, so that's basically it. This little bit over here, I'll just wait for this to develop more. It needs some time. I always knew that there was the possibility that, you know, this could become messy and we come down, kind of go up a bit higher, come down here, and then we do something like this and then create 1, 2, 3. So for that reason, I kind of just decided I'm going to stay out of this one. EuroCAD is the other one that I was looking at. With EuroCAD, we had basically this sort of push towards this area, but we didn't quite commit yet and get to it. So for that reason, I just stayed out. You know, sometimes it's better to just be very patient and just wait for what you're looking for. So I was looking for price to really come into this sort of price zone here. We didn't quite get it. We got a mini double bottom and pushed up aggressively. Something I couldn't have anticipated at that point. You know, it doesn't always have to come here, but it's a near miss, so we know that there's a lot of risk involved, where if we're looking to take a long position, it can always gravitate back down and fill that gap. So for that reason, I just decided not going to put any risk on the table, happy to stay out of it and wait for something even more better. Moving on to the next one, which was Euro New Zealand dollar. Now, Euro New Zealand dollar is also looking very good, very similar to EuroCAD, you know, with the near miss and the aggressive push away. We can see it over here on the daily that from this point down here, we had the near miss. So if we drill it on to the 4 hour, we can see that, okay, we didn't quite fill it. I don't really want to be taking a long position at this point. However, as we got the aggressive push away from the near miss, we did have a little continuation over here. Wasn't something that personally I would have wanted to get involved in anyway, but we can definitely see that the opportunity was within here. So, you know, you could refine in there and actually look for an entry, and, you know, using the poll, you would have been able to establish that, you know, this is where sort of price region we're looking at. So overall, it looks pretty good. Probably a larger correction now, but overall, this could become a larger structure to go to the downside, which could potentially be a very, very good sign. It's just not my traditional sort of trade that I'm looking for, whereas this would be very corrective in my eyes if we are going to be going long. So then we have to look at this, and anyway, there's a few variations, but Euro New Zealand dollar is one I'm going to stay out of, but it was definitely a very good trade, just not one that I would have opted in for. If we tapped into that low, that's when I would have jumped in for that trade. Next one is GBP Swiss. Now, I'm currently in this trade on GBP Swiss. I am currently locked in 2% profit. More than happy to be taken out of it if it is what it is. Daily charts is looking quite nice as well. As we can see, we are in this corrective squeeze here. So with this corrective squeeze, you know, it is basically taking its time. You know, it's basically within this area. It can come all the way down to this point, this point, this point, or even more, so to this point down here. And if we do break below it, it is what it is. So looking at it on a daily, there is a lot of nice potential on this pair. As we can see that, you know, it's in a very good area, but it doesn't necessarily have to be ready to go long. We do know from this sort of price structures, from previously seeing them, they do tend to be very profitable. So if I'm taking, let's just use, is it this one? Yes, it is. So if we take this sort of bit of price, we can see that we are seeing something quite similar over here, and I would be looking for a very similar price action. However, at the moment, it's not exactly as clear as I would want it to be, but we just have to understand that, you know, this could just be a running channel to the upside at the moment as well. So let's just be very patient and look at this as it is, and hopefully this does potentially drop off to one of these points before we do go long. But at the moment, I am looking at a potential position from here to roughly around about here, which will be roughly around about a 10% position, give or take. If it does plan out to be that much, it will be very nice. If not, you know, we still have these price points here. So it's still good in terms of structure. Looking at the context of this trade, we had this little point over here that we were looking at. We had the little break above, then we had the corrective squeeze. As it was non-progressive, it was very much likely we were going to be getting that M-star sort of style pattern, and we could see that we had the 1, 2, 3 leading up to it. We didn't have to, we could have just sold off, but as we spiked up, took out some liquidity, dropped into the 1 hour time frame, and in the 1 hour I was looking for refinement. I did somewhat miss this candle here, so as the candle as this candle spiked up, I didn't take the entry bang on there. I actually ended up taking it just a little bit later, which is completely fine. So we had the spike up, the push down, and then the entry was just off in here, and then we went off with it. It was more off a phase line entry. This was basically half the amount of risk. The total risk was up here, which was just in case we sort of consolidated a little bit more, I would be protected through it until I wanted to either take it out at a small loss, a small profit, or potentially lock in, break even. So that was basically the context of that trade. The next one was CAD Swiss, very, very similar to GBP Swiss, but you know, this one is aggressively selling off, which I really much like. The reason why I like this one a lot more is because if you look left, there isn't really anything. Even if you look left on this, there isn't much, but we are coming into some sort of very messy price action over here, which is not necessarily a bad thing. However, over here we have so much room to drop off. So that's one thing I am liking. We did somewhat sort of come a little bit reactive to this area. We didn't quite fill it, so I wouldn't be surprised if we do somewhat hover in this area before we drop off, or we just drop off aggressively and then hover over here and then create the next pattern. But even so, there's a lot of room here now for us to kind of just gravitate, create a flag to go to the downside. So waiting for some more capital to be built up in these areas so that we can continue with the new trend. Moving on to the wildcards, we have New Zealand CAD. Now, New Zealand CAD, there isn't very much I can say. It's one of those ones where I think, you know, it just requires more patience. You know, we had a little bit of a near miss over here, and then we have this, and I'll just range it in like that. And personally, I would just leave it alone and let it do its thing. When it's ready, it's ready. It'll probably be a next week sort of trade for me if it is going to be on watch. Most probably it'll go missed, I'll be honest with you, but looking at it, we have this push up, the nice little squeeze, and now we've got this. The entry is kind of in this zone, but at the moment it's not something that I'm going to be entertaining because there's not enough certainty. If this was a corrective squeeze to this low, I'd be more inclined, but we do have that nice equal spacing. This could be a very nice entry to go long. Maybe it might drop off a little bit before we go long, but this is definitely the area of value in my opinion. The next one is GA. Now GA it's one that I'm a bit iffy about because we haven't really approached this area yet, and until we've approached this area, that's when I'll be really interested. We did somewhat have this sort of call it a characteristic of this pair at the moment, where we're seeing price just dip, push up, dip, push up, dip, push up, and look at that progression down. This isn't the typical progression I see when we go into the downside. I see it very corrective for it to just accumulate some money, for it to push up again. So I think we're going to see that again, and then what we see, I don't know, will it be something like this where we get some sort of expand to the upside and then we can potentially come down? I'm not sure at this point, so have to wait, take a message from the market, but this can aggressively turn around even today. New York session, possibly, most probably London session, which is pretty much just started, and the bull momentum has potentially begun as well. So we'll have to wait and see. There is a little bit of upcoming news, but it's next week, so you know, we'll see if that gives it a volatility push. But for now, it's not really something I want to be entertained in. I'm just going to leave it. And in terms of the trend over here, we can see that right now is where we're breaking through the trend, but we've broken it somewhat correctively, and this isn't my typical sort of entry, so I wouldn't be wanting to get involved in anything like this. I believe, you know, this still has the room to just squeeze a bit lower. Let's say just look at something like this, and then price comes in for one final dip low, and then we go off, and then I'd be looking for something in this region where this happens, and then that would be the position that I kind of opt in for, maybe the first flag, or even in this region here, and we take this position, roughly call it, well, even if it was that big I wouldn't care, but let's just say we're in here, even so, more than happy with that. And yeah, probably take a little bit more if I had to. 84, doesn't matter, 10% there on the table, so it is what it is. Obviously that's looking at it on the 1 hour. There's more room for refinement, better position sizing in terms of risk reward. CAD looking for the 1, 2, 3, haven't really got that yet. It is correctively squeezing lower. I wouldn't be surprised if we just start making our way back up anyway. I do feel like, you know, there's a lot happening in this area here right now. I don't know if this is entirely the full structure at this point, so I wouldn't put all your eggs in one basket with this. I would just essentially wait for just that. That's literally all you would look at this point. Look at that as the high, see if this fills it and see where it goes. However, looking at structure, and I would always put structure first before candlesticks or trend lines or anything. Looking at this particular structure, I would see to the completion to this, and then look for candlestick secondary and so forth. So this is basically all I'd be looking at and waiting for price to approach this area here on the break off this trend line. The next one I'll be looking at is a USD yen, very similar to CAD yen, which is essentially looking at it like this, one simple trend line. We had a near miss, to this, and it's no surprise we gravitate back up. Now we're gravitating back up again and corrective, and we're just probably going to break it ever so slightly and then look for this sell, and I think that's going to be a phenomenally nice trade, and it will be in line with the DXY as well. As we can see with the DXY, we are looking for that corrective squeeze up before we get another sell. So much potential on the table for all of these pairs. I think, you know, the one that I'm very happy about is GBP Swiss. I was able to bank a little bit of profit on that, which I'm quite happy about. We just have to see it through now and see if it can get more commitment to the downside. If we get more of an aggressive play, that's great. We haven't really had room for a continuation pattern at this point, so that is something I'm looking forward to. Will it present itself now, later? I'm not entirely too sure. Will it even give us an opportunity? Sometimes with these pairs they don't give us an opportunity, so it is what it is. But yeah, overall that basically covers my whole watch list and wildcards for this week. I hope you enjoyed the Friday market breakdown here, and yeah, I'll catch you next week.